Hello! Today I thought I would talk to you about some of the books that I want to reread at some point in the future. Now, people who have been here for a while will know that I did last year have a challenge of rereading a book every month, and I did want to bring that forward with me this year, but it just hasn't happened, and I've had to scrap that idea and put it to the side for now. But there are still some books that I'm really desperate to get to. So I thought I would talk to you about those today, and I hope that talking to you actually reminds me to read them at some point and I can sort of hold myself accountable somewhat. I didn't realise, but all the books that I want to reread are classics in some form or another, which is interesting, and I don't want to reread all of them because I loved them. Some of them, yes, that was the case, but some of them I didn't get along with, and I want to reread them because I think I would get along with them better now. So I think this is an interesting look at my previous experiences with classics and also the reason why I think they would be more suited to me now. So I'm going to get straight into it with Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. I did enjoy this book. I think it kind of spoke to me because the writing's really beautiful and it's about a taboo subject, and I'm in the minority where I quite enjoy books about taboo subjects. I think it's interesting through literature to explore the more sinister aspects of society and of desire and everything like that, and I think this book questions what's right and what's wrong in a very interesting way, because obviously what's happening is wrong, but the way it's happening is kind of questionable, and I think it's just a really interesting discussion about our views of what is right and wrong. The reason that I want to reread this is because I read it about 6 years ago now, and I was quite young when I read it, and I think because I was that bit younger, I probably didn't fully understand the themes or what was happening, and I think I very much got that feeling at the time. It was one of those books that I read knowing that it could be a book that really meant something to me, but also knowing that I wasn't getting the full potential out of it, whether that was because of, as I say, my age or the time in which I read it, I don't know. But I think it's one of these books that I'll probably come back to and enjoy a lot more. That said, I think there's also a possibility that I'll enjoy it less because I'll realise that the things that I thought were in there that I missed are just not in there. I do find that sometimes with rereads, but we shall see anyway. So yes, there's that one. Then I would like to reread Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This is one that I really hated when I first read it. I was about 19 and I was kind of at a time in my life where I liked plot-heavy books and I just liked escapism in my reading, and this book did not give that to me. I also think I went into it, as a lot of people probably do, expecting it to be this great sweeping romance, and it's not that at all, which I think would be more interesting to me now, but because that was the preconception that I had of it, it kind of fell short of what I was expecting it to be, and therefore was just not my cup of tea at the time. I think as well, in terms of classics, this is probably one of the much denser ones, and it was one of the first classics I read, so it was completely throwing me in at the deep end. I was at a stage in my life where I didn't think I liked classics anyway. This just kind of confirmed that belief. However, I have since watched a film about the Bronte sisters, which has really interested me and made me want to delve back into their work. I have also currently got a biography of Emily Bronte out from the library, and I think having a little bit of background knowledge about their lives and the experience they went through to get published, I think that will very much help my experience with reading this, and also knowing what I'm getting when I'm going into it will probably help me a lot as well. Keeping with the Bronte theme, I would also like to read Jane Eyre again by Charlotte Bronte. This is a book that I know I will love, but I ruined it for myself. So when I was about 16, I read the first half of this book, but I was at a stage in my reading where I kind of flitted. I didn't really stay with books, and I had half-finished books all over my bookshelf, which would drive me insane now, but at the time that was just how I read, that was how I functioned. And I was enjoying this book, but I just ran out of steam with it and picked up my next new book and put it to the side. But when I came back to it, I was 19 and I could remember enough to not want to go back and read the whole thing again. I mean, I had watched the film since, and I could remember in my head where I had got to. I had got to the part where she was just about to leave school, and I could remember what had happened. So I read the second half without having reread the first half, and I think that was a major mistake because I wasn't invested in the characters, and in hindsight that's no surprise I hadn't read the build-up. Even though I could remember the main events that had happened, I think it's the subtle characterisation that you miss when you read a book in two halves with like a 2-year gap between. So I am fully aware that I ruined this for myself. I've even bought a nice new edition to inspire myself to read it, so hopefully that's going to happen in the not too distant future. Then I've also got another one that I didn't enjoy when I read it, but again, my reading experience was very much what ruined it for me. Excuse the chewed cover. There were dogs in the house and that happened. But anyway, this is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Now, I have been an Oscar Wilde avid fan ever since I was in secondary school. I think his values and some of his especially shorter stories for children are so wonderful. However, again, I started reading this, funnily enough, when I was 16. I was going through a bit of a classics kick and trying a few out, and I really enjoyed it when I started reading it, but I then put it aside. When I came back to it last year, I did start from the beginning, but what I did was I had this for free on my Kindle, so I read it during my half-hour lunch breaks, and I think reading it that way, although I enjoyed the experience of reading it that way, it wasn't the best way to experience this book, because I was very much getting literally just half-hour snippets every day and I wasn't fully concentrating on what I was reading, so I think the general plot felt quite lacking for me, but I think that may well be because of how I read it rather than because of the book itself. So I don't know, it's one that I'm sceptical to go back into, because I really did find it quite disappointing as an Oscar Wilde fan. I think my feelings were generally that it was very much about his views on society and things like that than an actual plot-based book, which normally wouldn't bother me, but I think you needed a bit more plot than what I got from this. As I say, that may well be because of how I read it. I think I did an individual review when I did read it, so I'll link that down below if I can find it. So yes, I'm at some point going to come back to this one. And finally, I have one that I need to get to soon because I've recently downloaded the audiobook of the prequel, and that is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I really enjoyed this when I read it a few years ago, and I really want to come back to it. I've been wanting to come back to it since anyway, because I think it's one of those books that you get more from the more you read it, and it's just a lovely, comforting story if I remember rightly. I would very much like to reread it before I go into the prequel. I'm not expecting big things from the prequel. I have heard nothing but negative reviews, and I think the way that it has been received is kind of the way that I felt it would be received when it was announced. However, it was in the daily deals for $1.99, and it's also narrated by Reese Witherspoon, and I listened to the little clip and her audio narration is actually really nice. So I wanted to give that a go, and I think listening to it on audio with a narrator that I can see in my head is going to be a better experience than reading it. And also I think because I'm going into it not expecting much, it may pleasantly surprise me. So there's that one as well. So that's all the sort of main books that I want to reread at the moment. Obviously there are others that crop up now and again, but those are the ones that I keep meaning to reread. And a lot of those are the reason why I actually started my rereading challenge, but I just never got around to them. So hopefully I will kickstart my rereading challenge at some point when I get more time to read, and I will get those done. And let me know down below, are there any books that you would really love to reread, and is that because you enjoyed them so much, or is it because you think you had a negative experience that wasn't fair on the book for whatever reason? Do let me know, it would be interesting to hear if I'm not alone, and I'll see you next time. Bye!